So whatever my little cold intro will be, the music, and then
The singing
I'll do my intro.
kills me.
My singing or the singing of the
You.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, at
You
least I
know
respect that you don't even try.
yeah, I'm classically trained. This is Black Steel Magnolia. I'm Tami Sawyer, a black Southern girl here to talk to you about tough issues, introduce you to the people I love, and give you a kick in the ass to be the change you want to see in the world. Let's get started. Oh man, welcome to Black Steel Magnolia. I am kicking it today with one of my oldest friends. God, Abby, we've known each other since we were 15 years old?
Indeed.
And we're now 38. Shit. So 23 years in the game.
Why you gotta say our ages?
I mean, because we're
Nah, I'm
still
not
Magnolia.
embarrassed. I look good.
I know. I'm like, I don't look 38. Shit. You know?
I went to this jazz
I'm
night the
proud.
other day, or jazz lunch the other day, and there was this white man singing, and he could blow, right? He's from Kentucky. He was singing fire, but he was like,
He
he's
sound like me.
35. And I was like, and me and the person I was with, we were like, really? You know, black don't crack.
Black don't cry. Yo, so Abby and I met at Georgetown. We went to this bougie camp one summer to learn about
International
international
relations
relations.
summer camp.
Yeah,
Can it
and
get more
she
bougie
was
than that?
being it can't, and that's she was being bougie and stuck up and wasn't talking to nobody. So I confronted her in the bathroom.
I was being
I was like,
shy because I'm shy.
"Oh, okay,"
And you accosted
and
me
I was
in the restroom
like.
and forced
You
me
just
to be
gonna
your
ignore all
friend.
the black kids. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to you.
In fairness, I also was not talking to the white kids. So I think we can
I
be.
didn't notice that. That didn't matter. All I knew was I had created this little clique of the little black kids, and you would walk past us, and I was like, I'm going to the bathroom. What's your problem? You don't talk to black people? Place. Like I was saying, me and Abby met at Georgetown, and her name's Abiosseh.
Abiosseh.
Say it, Abby.
My name is
Abiosseh.
Abiosseh. It's Yoruba. It means born on Sunday. But I'm not Nigerian. I'm from the Gambia. I was
Abby is from the Gambia.
born in the
What's
Gambia,
that mean?
the Gambia. Um,
That's by Senegal.
it's named after the river. We are surrounded on three sides by Senegal, but we do have access to the ocean, which is very important. Little known fact about the Gambia is that the river is the only river that is always navigable, and that is why the British wanted it and why we have this sliver of a country inside Senegal.
Interesting. Does the
Um,
Gambia and Senegal have a good relationship?
It depends on who's in leadership at whichever moment, but generally, on a personal level, there's very good relationships because we are friends, we are family. My family emigrated from um, Saint Louis in Senegal to Gambia, and the other side emigrated also from Sierra Leone. So Gambia is also a country of a lot of immigrants or people from backgrounds that are spread across West Africa. We are kind of this microcosm um, of West African culture and assimilation of different ethnic groups, different countries, different linguistic groups.
And so, growing up, you always told me that you were a returned Gambian. What's that mean?
Well, our history is still a bit up in the air. It's not clear. And I think, to be honest, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot since reading Yagassi's book, Homegoing, because
Yeah.
um, really one of the things that makes African countries and African Americans very similar is that there is this perception that, our history extends back really quite far. And yes, we do have a strong tradition of oral history, but at the same time, I realize that a lot of people that I meet also have limitations on how far back they can tell or relate their family stories. So, you know, I can relate my family story to a certain extent, but beyond that is a little bit hard and it's a little bit fluid to know exactly what's the truth. I know that the Creoles in Sierra Leone, who are closely related to the Akus in Gambia, which I am, are returned slaves, people who returned from British colonies in the Americas back to Africa, and of course not to their country of origin. So there's a potential that that is a background history of ours, but it's not absolutely clear. Recently, there's been some Facebook groups that highlight different histories in Gambia, and we learned that one of our great grandfathers or great great grandfathers was the first lawyer in the Gambia, but um, they or however he was classified was as an Igbo, which all of us have Yoruba names, so it's all a bit confusing to us. And so, that's one of the kind of detrimental factors of slavery, of the way in which the British Empire and slave traders move people around, and how and the type of migration that happened, forceful migration that then led to a loss of history for many people.
So it's interesting because you talk about this loss of history, and homegoing talks about this too. We often think that the people who only Africans who lost history were African Americans, right?
Right.
But forced migration and war and slavery on the continent is very similar circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, and I would recommend that if people are interested, that they also watch the BBC special series on history of Africa. And there you get a glimpse into both the Atlantic slave trade and the Indian Ocean slave trade. Um, and the slave trade in East Africa was just as pervasive as it was in West Africa. And when you consider that villages were being pillaged all the way into Congo, like deep into Congo, for the slave trade in East Africa, you can imagine how many cultures, how many communities were disrupted for this slave trade. So it was interesting because in our book, I'm part of a book club here in Kenya, and when we read Yagassi's book, which was really fantastic, like I'm really impressed at her age, how she could weave together this story that was just really amazing and relatable. But in our discussions with mostly Kenyan women, one thing that emerged was that, like, maybe something like four-fifths of the women there also had limitations in how far back they could tell their kind of story or knew their ancestors. And as you know, my husband is Kenyan, and beyond
Mm-hmm.
his grandfather, he doesn't really know his history beyond his grandfather. And so, like, I know my history maybe 5 generations, and that's it. So 5 generations is really not that far. I mean, it's probably similar to what you would know of your own history, right? So there's this
Right.
commonality in this experience of being robbed of your history, of being robbed of culture, um, and that people don't recognize. And I also think that, like, that also plays into the dynamic of some of the divisions between Africans and African Americans, in the sense that, Africans, I think, have this tendency to judge African Americans as people who don't have a history or don't have a background. But forgetting that our own history is really marked by also these same white people who came, and the same slave trade, and the same experience of colonialism and oppression, and that some of that has been lost on us as well. So it's quite interesting, as someone who was born on this continent, who or I currently live in Kenya. So someone who was born on this continent, who lived majority of my life in the US, and who's returned to this continent. It's very interesting because I'm I'm very able to see all of these interconnections that sometimes are not so visible to others. And I can recall many instances in university, etc., where there were these divisions between Black people and other people of African descent. And I can remember, some tensions, or times where African Americans would say, okay, yeah, Georgetown has this population of, I don't remember if it was 3 or 5% Black people, but if you look at it, really half of those people are Caribbean and African, so they're not really Black people. So they're using these numbers to like inflate the percentage of Black Americans, but it's not really Black Americans, because you have a lot of people who classify themselves as, as me, a hyphenated American, Gambian American, Ghanaian American, Jamaican American. And somehow they saw that that was an injustice. And I mean, I could see that perspective, but at the same time, I feel that, like, when you grow up Black in America, it doesn't matter if you're hyphenated. At some point, you're going to be humbled, and you'll know that you just are Black.
I mean, Americana showed us that, which we read at the same time, I think, and discussed when we were both in DC, right? Like, a lot of the book is about being Nigerian, right? And Nigerian in America. But eventually, white people just start treating her as Black.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, like, where you're from, to them, you're just Black.
Yeah.
And one point that you just made that I want to touch on. So I came and visited you in Kenya, and I remember stepping off the plane and just feeling like giddy. Like, I think a lot of Black Americans can't fathom the feeling you'll get when you quote unquote return home. And to Africans, the whole continent is not our home, right? They're like, look, y'all, and we're just like, kind of how they did in Coming to America, spin the globe, put my finger on the map, I'm coming home,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I came to Kenya. Kenya's my first time in Africa, and I came there because you were there, and I just remember like almost being in tears when we stepped outside the airport. And of course, Janita wasn't having it. Janita's my friend who came too. She was like, "Girl, get over yourself." Uh, but so I just remember being so overwhelmed, and your driver, and we'll talk to people about how you're a rich African later, but
I
your
am not.
driver,
And that was not my driver. Clearly my taxi guy, which everyone on this continent has people have a guy, whether it's your taxi guy or your boda guy, your motorcycle guy, everybody has a guy because you need
okay, all
transportation.
right, so
Don't do it.
Abby's guy. Abby's guy picks us up, and I'm just like emotional in the car at midnight. Like, so, like, what do you think about like Black Americans? Do we look American to you? Like, giving him 20 questions, and he goes, you're just Black, and I'm expecting him to be like, welcome home, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And just like my whole trip, I remember like every time I encountered Kenyans, how underimpressed they were with us being there. It was not a big deal. It felt like, and I was surprised because I was like, aren't they excited we're back? And it was just very Black American of me, right? Like, look, we made it, y'all.
I wouldn't even say it's Black American. I feel like it's actually like an American thing. I think that there's a sense when you leave America, you start to like really be more conscious of the fact that Americans have a sense of entitlement.